Check with now, right?
Are you ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all guests to this remote meeting of the council. I'd like to welcome members of the public and press who may be watching the meeting, which is being broadcast live on YouTube. Firstly, I wish to give a few announcements regarding this meeting. Please keep your microphones muted unless you're invited to speak, but please keep your cameras turned on. If you wish to speak during the meeting and in debates, please indicate by raising your physical hand so I can see you on video. Please remember that I can only see 25 members on my screen at any one time. We'll be moving between screens to see if any member raises their hands, but please be patient and please do not unmute yourself. When I call you to speak, I'll give you a few seconds to unmute yourself so you don't lose your speaking time due to any technological delays. We do have a very full agenda tonight, so I'll be very mindful of the time and length of debate I will allow for each item. The meeting order paper, which includes public and member questions and answers, was published online this afternoon and also emailed directly to all members. For those watching on YouTube, the full council agenda and supplementary can be accessed via the link on the YouTube page under Show More. For voting, when moving recommendations in a report or a motion, the voting options will appear on each member's screen for 30 seconds. Whilst the electronic vote is being conducted, I'll ask any member joining the meeting on the telephone how they intend to vote, and this will be added to those votes electronically cast. I will then read the results for, against, and abstentions. Please note the abstain figure read out will include members who did not select any of your voting options during the 30-second vote for whatever reason. When we arrive at items 16, 17, and 18, members, please note the recommendations are just for noting. On your screen, when the votes are taken, a vote for or agreed is simply the formality of noting or acknowledging that the report has come to council. Finally, if any member is leaving the meeting and not returning, please notify the chair by raising your hand or send a chat message to every mail. Item 1, apologies for absence. I received apologies for absence for this evening's meeting from Councillor Abdul Mohit, Rachel, Daniel Lee Parker, Mughal, Murphy, Anthony McCalmont, Tamina Raman Siddiqa, and Roy Dasgupta. Are there any other apologies for absence from councillors to be recorded, please?
Chair.
Yes.
Councillor Sasha Dasgupta.
Yes, who? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Sasha Dasgupta.
Sasha Dasgupta, thank you.
Chair.
Any more apologies?
Chair, Councillor Rachel Tripp's available. Is this a different Rachel? She is available. Rachel is available.
Oh, I thought I saw her before. Rachel Tripp, is it?
Yes, I am here, Chair. Sorry, my
Yeah,
Wi-Fi was playing up earlier.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Anybody else? That's all. Thank you very much. Item 2, declaration of interest. Are there any members wishing to declare disclosable pecuniary interest or other pecuniary or personal interest they may have in any matter which is to be considered at this meeting? Anyone? Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. I move as a correct record the minutes of the last ordinary meeting of the council held on 16 November 2020. Do I have a seconder, please?
Chair. Chair, I'm pleased to second.
Thank
Chair,
you.
before you
Is that agreed?
agree, Chair, before you agree those minutes, there's a correction to be added in there.
Councillor Avinda Veda, are you the one speaking?
I am, Chair, on page 15. Yeah, Chair, on page 15, where you've got item C, the minutes should reflect that I did mention that Bandi Chor Din was being celebrated by the Sikh community, and it's not in here. And the chair had to be reminded of that.
Okay, can we amend that to put Councillor Vinda Singh?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, that has been amended, thank you.
Needs to be
Is
voted.
that agreed? Can you show hands, please? Is that agreed? Yes, thank you. Item 4, Newham Partners Update. Our partners update this evening, I'm pleased to welcome Jolly Olajimi, who manages the C40 City Global Network of Initiatives to address the environmental and public health crisis caused by poor air quality. C40 Cities is a climate leadership group which encompasses 96 cities around the world, including London, and the colleagues may recall C40 Cities Director Mark Watts addressed full council back in March 2019. Thank you, Dolly. Dolly, you have up to 10 minutes, after which members will have up to 10 minutes to ask any questions they may have. Dolly, can you start? Oh, yeah, there you are. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can all see this. Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Dolly Olajini and I'm C40's Air Quality Network Manager. And firstly, I want to say thank you very much for inviting me to speak this evening on air quality, health and equity in cities. For about the next 8 or so minutes, I'm going to give a very quick overview on C40 and what we do. And then I'm going to share the relationship between air quality, health and equity. And then I'll end by giving some global best practice examples of how cities around the world are providing equitable transport solutions. So firstly, on C40, we are a global climate leadership group. We connect 97 of the world's greatest megacities to take bold climate and air quality action to lead the way towards a healthier, more sustainable and equitable future, to really make sure that we get the future that we both want and we need. The mayors of our cities are committed to delivering on the most ambitious goals of the Paris Agreement, as well as cleaning the air that we breathe. As mentioned, I manage the Air Quality Network, which specifically supports a geographically diverse cohort of cities to measure, understand, and reduce air pollution to meet both public health and climate goals. And London is in fact the lead city of this global air quality network, as Sadiq Khan has really demonstrated strong leadership, commitment, and ambition towards improving air quality. And for those that don't know, the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, is currently the chair of the organization. Okay. So air pollution presents a major global health risk in our cities. It is responsible for the premature deaths of approximately 7 million people annually, and this is linked to both outdoor and indoor air pollution. When you scale that down to the UK, we're looking at approximately 40,000 premature deaths, and here in London, that's approximately 9,000 deaths. And there have been decades of research demonstrating that exposure to air pollution damages the heart and lungs. And recent research is now showing how this leads to increased susceptibility to the severe and fatal outcomes of the pandemic. Air pollution is also linked to strokes, poor mental health, and depression. And it also shortens children's life expectancy, including the very tragic loss of Londoner Ella Roberta, only age 9, back in 2013. Her rare and life-threatening asthma has been directly attributed to toxic levels of air pollution. Over 90% of citizens in cities are exposed to fine particulate matter concentrations, which are well above the safe levels established by the World Health Organization. And in turn, this affects our cities' economies, leading to high healthcare costs, low productivity and livability. And we now know that air quality and public health inextricably intersects with environmental justice, as low-income ethnic minorities are disproportionately exposed to air pollution in London, but also several cities around the world too. The pandemic is compounding these existing inequities in cities, resulting in high infection and death rates, particularly in our Black and Asian communities. Now, there will be several reasons for this, including living with poor lung health and other pre-existing health conditions, which can be linked to living in areas with toxic levels of air pollution. Therefore, tackling air pollution and health inequities is very much a social and racial justice issue. So how are cities providing equitable transport solutions? So here in London, the world's first ultra-low emission zone, which was launched last year, benefits all Londoners, but in particular, it benefits citizens that are living within the capital's most deprived areas. And it's already proving to be a success, as the scheme has already contributed to a 44% reduction in NO2. Now, this shows that ambitious transport interventions can achieve significant and dramatic air quality improvements in our cities. The expansion that's coming in force next year will bring further air quality and health benefits for the residents of Newham as it expands up to the north and south circular roads. And a recent report published by the GLA not too long ago shows that the policies that the mayor's working towards in the London Environment Strategy will reduce inequities in air pollution exposure by 85% by 2030. Over in Philadelphia, they launched in 2015 a new bike share scheme called Indigo, which prioritizes the city's low income and underserved neighborhoods. And the really fantastic thing about this bike share scheme is that it truly has equity at the center of the scheme. Now, we know that cities around the world have their own bike share schemes. We've got the successful Santander scheme here in London. However, Philadelphia has recognized that many of their cyclists tend to be male, white and middle class, and they really wanted to see some diversity in their ridership. So they provided an extensive community engagement and outreach program to make sure that the community's needs were both heard and met, and influence the decision-making process when trying to think through the locations of the stations. And now the bike sharing scheme is in place, these communities have seen improvements in their health as well as their economic opportunities. And last but not least, in Barcelona, they launched their new low emission zone at the beginning of this year. This low emission zone is projected to reduce NOx emissions by up to 31% and reduce PM10 emissions by up to 39% by 2035. Barcelona is specifically supporting its low-income communities by offering a 25% discount across the entire public transportation network. Now, this is amazing because typically in cities, when they're offering a discount to their low-income communities, the discount might only apply to a certain element of the network, for example, their buses. But in Barcelona, it's across the entire network. So it's the buses, the metro system, the tram system, etc. So what this does is increases low-income communities' mobility and then increases their access to jobs across the city. An additional benefit to the discount is that it really encourages citizens to opt for a more sustainable mode of traveling. I'm going to close this presentation by sharing some equity insights from the City of LA, as they're really active within our air quality network. So in Los Angeles, the communities are asking if the city is trying to address social and racial justice or implement environmental improvement via a zero emission area. So for context, the City of Los Angeles has committed as part of C40's Green and Healthy Streets Declaration to implement a zero emission area by 2030. Now, in the city's opinion, these are not mutually exclusive. However, these types of questions from their communities have made the city realize that they need to put their communities first, reconsider what equity means, and use these considerations and reflections during the implementation process. The city needs to ensure that marginalized communities are with them every step of the way, and to make sure that gentrification, displacement, and safety risks are at the forefront of their considerations. Now the city is making huge progress in building equity into the process, which does mean effectively slowing down the zero emission area implementation. But the City of LA recognizes that communities know what's best for them. So they are building in that space and that time for effective inclusive participation to ensure that the zero emission area is meeting the needs of their communities. And that is all from me. Thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dolly. Is any member got any
Oladi,
question?
well done, Oladi.
Any member got any question to Dolly, please? Just raise your hand. Any member got a question?
I can't see any.
Oh, Councillor Joshua Garfield
Councillor Gray is indicating.
Thank you.
and Councillor Vinda Singh next.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Dolly, for that presentation. It was really illuminating. We know that Londoners subsidise the roads through their bus and tube fares. And we know that London boroughs, especially inner London boroughs, although we're technically in outer London one, parts of Newham are in zone 2/3, are having to implement new and innovative ways of reducing not just car ownership, but the short journeys travelled by cars. What do you think is the best way to combat what is often fierce opposition to these schemes from a very vocal minority of residents, especially in a borough like Newham, where the vast majority of residents don't own a car? But in order to translate that into mass support for these schemes and for our health, how do you think we would go about best opposing those sorts of concerns?
Thank you very much for your question, Joshua. So this is a challenge that is experienced by a number of our cities within C40, where they're receiving not just opposition, but opposition from very powerful and loud lobby groups that may not reflect the interests and the needs of the wider community. So we're seeing cities at C40 really think about what does an inclusive community engagement approach look like? So they are applying lots of different approaches where they either create local leadership groups or they work with local businesses to understand what are the needs of this community, recognizing that their needs will not be identical, and making sure that they sustain engagement so those needs are reflected in the environmental planning process. And a number of cities are using varied tools to do this. So I think collectively within the air quality network, they've recognized that focusing on health and having health at the center of the conversation and equity is a key way of gaining buy-in. So I think one important example would be around how to engage with car owners. So a lot of cities have recognized that there is unfortunately a false sense of security when in a car. A lot of people unfortunately don't realize that they are exposed to high levels of air pollution when within their car, and actually it's healthier for them and their children to walk and cycle to school. So I think really simply education is really important. Educating communities on the health risks of air pollution, exposure scenarios, and what's best for their children's health too. I think that is a really strong, powerful way of gaining buy-in.
Thank you. Councillor Vinda Singh.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Dolly. Just a quick question. When I look at Green Street itself, and where do you think we would actually, obviously, you might not know him as much as which I know, put a cycle stand or a bike docking station for residents to be able to use it from Green Street up to, say, Stratford or even to Beckton? Because when we look at the constraints of the makeup of our borough, and also how the street layout is, it makes it difficult. So how do you try to get over that? And how do you think you can try to overcome, similar to what Josh is saying, try to engage the community in the right way? Because a lot of residents are seeing that they're not being listened to at times, and that is something which we need to work on.
Thank you very much for your question. So apologies, I do not know the context that well, as in I can't visualize this particular street. So I would say that it is really important to engage with the communities on new cycling infrastructure. So I think the communities will be best placed to share the cycling infrastructure, where it should be located, the design of the infrastructure. So we're seeing a lot of cities within the air quality network go beyond the typical types of data they would collect in the environmental planning process. So they'll be collecting air quality data, they might be collecting vehicle data, but now they're thinking about collecting population and demographic data and using the information they collect from community engagement to really understand how they should be designing their transportation interventions. So I think a holistic approach is necessary here. But I do really believe that by engaging with the communities, they can help identify areas that cities should be targeting for their interventions, but also it can help influence the design too. I would say that a lot of cities are also recognizing that it's not just about the physical infrastructure, but it's about the social infrastructure too. So when you're rolling out a new cycling infrastructure, in order to increase uptake, you need to support city communities rather by rolling out engagement programs, offering provision classes, trying to improve their cycling skills and proficiency. But you need to communicate with those communities first to really understand what is it that they need.
Thank you. Councillor Gray. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just trying to mute myself. Yeah, thank you, Dolly. It was a really, really fascinating speech. I've just was somewhat surprised that you didn't mention the concept of just transition, because one really powerful way of overcoming opposition is that to reassure people that the new jobs, the new green jobs of the future will be well paid, they will be safe, they will have access to trade unions, and especially in the transport industry, which is probably going to be impacted the most. It's really, really important that lower paid working class people know we've got their backs over this and we're not going to sell them out. So as I said, just transition to me is not, it's the only tool, but it's a major tool in the box, which we should be reassuring and explaining how we're going to protect people's incomes.
I completely agree with you. So just transition is a key pillar of C40. It is very much a part of C40's priorities around how we support cities in implementing a green and just COVID recovery plan. So a lot of cities are thinking about, well, what are the equity implications of my transportation interventions? How do I ensure that these interventions that I'm implementing do not exacerbate the socioeconomic situations of my communities? But in order to really understand that, this is where, again, inclusive community engagement comes in. And you're right to mention increasing access to jobs, as it's important to understand when developing and implementing a policy to understand, well, what is the impact assessment here? So not just understanding the air quality and the health benefits, but how does this new intervention create and increase access to jobs? How does it improve the livelihoods of our local communities? So I completely agree with you. And it's definitely something that our cities are actively thinking about.
Thank you. I've got only 3 minutes left. Councillor Mas Patel. And I've got 3 more people to speak. Councillor Mas Patel, can you just quickly say your question, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Dolly. Really, really great. Good presentation. My question is that we know it's been in the press quite a bit that over 70% of pollution is caused by just 100 companies globally. And 20 of those companies produce a third of that pollution. Now, in terms of as policymakers on a local level, what's your recommendation in terms of ensuring that we make industry, big business, and the corporates in our part of East London, certainly in our part of Newham, ensure that they're doing their bit to tackle poor air quality and pollution? Because let's be honest, their reliance on carbon causes a lot of the pollution that we've got.
Thank you very much for your question. So I would say a couple of things. I think it is incredibly critical that local policymakers are engaging with their mayoral level decision makers, state governments, regional authorities, but also businesses that are operating within their boroughs and across the country too. And it's that regional engagement that will really deliver real impacts in improving air quality and achieving GHG reductions. So cities within the air quality network and across C40 are really thinking about how do they better engage and collaborate with not just their state level governments, but businesses too, but also trying to set an example and inspire these businesses to deliver change. So for a lot of cities, that would be simply for lack of a better word, trying to, if they have ownership of their public fleet, shifting to electrification of that public fleet, setting that example, so then the industries that they're trying to engage with, those businesses, are then inspired and encouraged to do the same.
Thank you. Councillor Mumtaz Khan, we've only got 1 minute left, so if you just quickly say your question, and then I go to Councillor John Whitworth, and that's the last one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Dolly, thank you very much for your lovely presentation. I wanted to just quickly ask, in terms of when you talk about a holistic approach, mothers with young children and sometimes with double buggies, may not always be able to use public transport or bicycles. I just wondered how we are able to educate and support mums in order for them to resort to other ways of travelling, because that's something that's not being addressed at the moment.
And I do agree that this is definitely something that should be prioritised in transportation planning. And there is a team within C40 called Inclusive Climate Action that really looks at gender in transport planning, specifically women. So not just understanding how they move around the city and making sure that's reflected in the design of transportation interventions, but also thinking about what are their specific needs around safety. So making sure that the public transport networks are crime-free and safe for them. So again, this does come back to this effective community engagement that cities should be delivering. So you're right in saying that for a lot of the people that are within our communities do have very different individual needs, and it's not as easy for them to now pick up a bike and cycle to work or cycle to school, or they may be juggling lots of different jobs, and it's just a lot harder for them to make that shift, to make that change. And this is where a holistic approach is required, thinking about what additional resources and incentives and assistance could I be offering to particular groups within my borough. And you can only really understand that by directly talking to those communities.
Councillor John Whitworth, I'll give you a very quick time to just ask your question, please. Quickly.
I'll be quick, yes. Thank you very much, Dolly. I'd like to know what sort of engagement you have with schools and young people, because it's so important to get them used to healthy travel and to aspire not to aspire to have a car unless they really need one when they're older.
Just got about 30 seconds to answer that, Dolly.
Okay, I'll answer really quickly. And so the most obvious example that comes to my mind is the citizen engagement element of the Breathe London study. So I don't know if you remember, but I think it was last spring where 250 school children engaged in this amazing citizen science project where they had air pollution monitors on their backpacks. And that was just such a great way of raising children's awareness of air quality and got them directly involved in understanding air pollution and the need to reduce air pollution. But there are so many other examples, but I thought that was the best example to give on how to engage schools on air quality.
Thank you very much, Dolly. We know you're extremely busy and we have appreciated you giving up your time to speak with us tonight. You're of course welcome to stay, but Council Fuller says if you wish to leave. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much.
I had a question, but time is against us. Thank you. Item 5, announcements by me. I should like to make the following announcements. I'm delighted to congratulate Newham on winning the 2020 Local Authorities Pension Fund Investment Award for Good Governance. Second one, Newham has been supporting 16 days of activism, an international campaign focusing on stopping out violence against women and girls, which ended last Thursday. So councillors, staff and others publicly commit to never committing, excusing or remaining silent about male violence against women. The council support for this campaign follows last month's school council, at which members unanimously agreed to call for misogyny to be formally recognized as a hate crime. Third, December 1 was World AIDS Day, and the number of councillors marked the day by displaying the red ribbon and showing their support on social media. Thank you. Therefore, across the borough, our team of COVID marshals have been playing a very important role in fight against COVID-19. The high visibility group of officers from our community safety, community neighborhoods, active Newham and highways are patrolling busy areas and communities across the borough with a focus on engaging, explaining, and encouraging COVID safe behavior. 5, congratulations to Kensington Primary School for winning 2 awards recently. Pearson National Teaching Awards 2020, Gold Award for Making a Difference, Primary School of the Year, and Test School Awards 2020, Wellbeing and Mental Health Award. Forest Gate Community School, Test School Awards 2020, English Team or Teacher of the Year Award. I also note that Test Lifetime Achievement Award was given to a teacher, sadly no longer with us, who taught in Newham for many years. Siddiqa Mubasha didn't just play a pivotal role in establishing Urdu in the curriculum or champion the study of heritage languages during her long service as a teacher. She was also a strong advocate of rights of women and migrants and was fiercely in her fight against prejudice. And the last one is Happy Hanukkah to everyone. Thank you. Item 6, any announcements by the mayor? Does the mayor have an announcement, please?
I do, Chair. Thank you very much. Okay, colleagues, this is the final full council prior to Christmas, and you'll all be aware that early today the government announced that London, along with parts of Essex and Hertfordshire, will be moving to the new Tier 3 enhanced high risk set of restrictions from 1 minute past midnight on Wednesday, as the transmission of the virus is growing at an exponential rate here in the capital and also in those places. You'll also be aware that the government announced that medical experts have discovered what they believe to be a variant of the COVID-19 vaccine, and it's grown faster than the previous variant of COVID-19 that came to this country last year. And the variant has been identified in some 60 local authorities across London and the southeast. And they believe that that may well be the reason why there's been this exponential growth rate in COVID-19 here in the capital. I wanted to make a statement to you all with regards to the position as it concerns schools. And as we come to the end of the winter term, there's been much discussion across the capital as to whether the local authority should be closing schools, as some London boroughs have been doing. Before I say any more on this, I would like to firstly thank school staff across Newham for their dedication and efforts this term for all our children and young people, and indeed throughout the pandemic this year. Those working in schools have faced an incredibly challenging set of circumstances, and I am sure you will join me in thanking them for all their efforts. As with much decision making around COVID-19 and the pandemic, there are no easy answers, and the present challenge we face is this: of all the different alternatives we have before us when it comes to school, none of which we want to choose, which is the best for our children and young people as we manage virus transmission in our community here in Newham and across London. On the one hand, we are desperate to reduce the spread of COVID-19 rightly in the community, reducing the number of people who become seriously unwell and allowing everyone to live as normal lives as they can despite the restrictions and the constraints. However, we also know how important school is, not just for educational outcomes, but as important right now to our children's wider well-being. Children have paid a terrible price for this pandemic so far, and we owe it to them to do all we can to help them navigate the challenges of living with COVID-19 in the coming months with as little as disruption as possible and as much support that we can possibly provide them. So over the course of the last 24 hours, I have discussed the options and these challenges with Councillor Sarah Ruiz, the Cabinet Member for Education, Councillor Zulfikar Ali, the Cabinet Member for Health and Adult Social Care, the Chief Executive, our Director of Education and our Director of Public Health, as well as other senior officers. And the position is this. Firstly, we do not believe the local authority has the legal ability to instruct schools to close. The public health provisions in statute are related to outbreaks in particular settings, not settings overall. And alongside this, the Secretary of State for Education has reserved right of decision-making on school opening in the pandemic legislation. Our understanding is that the government has now challenged Greenwich and Islington councils on their current schools closure position. However, even without a legal basis, we have our leadership role in the advice that we provide to school. Firstly, all school governors and heads will know the situation of their schools best. They are no doubt thinking about this daily in terms of the capacity they have in their staff teams and the needs of their pupils, including the most vulnerable. We must trust in their dedication and their expertise to navigate these difficult challenges. And please be assured, our public health team has worked day in, day out throughout the months of this pandemic with all of our schools, and especially during this term, providing them preventative advice and supporting them when cases of COVID-19 have emerged. In consultation with our Director of Public Health, our advice to schools now is this: only close to in-person teaching before the end of term this week if they have outbreaks in multiple year groups. This would suggest that there is more likelihood of there being further cases and within the school, and with the term about to finish gives the best chance for children and staff to isolate and disrupt ongoing transmission. Where cases are confined to a single year group, as is the case with most situations in Newham schools currently, we believe that sending that particular bubble home is the most appropriate step. To be clear, our approach is based upon the following. One, the majority of situations in Newham schools where bubbles have been sent home to isolate relate to single cases of confirmed COVID-19 in the school. While there have been examples of small outbreaks among children and young people, this is not the norm, despite a full term of school. Linked to the above, the evidence is that schools have not been environments that have created a lot of spread. Despite a term's worth of teaching in schools, the number of children tested positively have increased quickly only recently, and this may well be due to factors outside of the school environment and school day. As I said above, we have not seen many school-based outbreaks. Number three, we know that school is vital for children, both for learning and their wider emotional well-being, and we believe it is important not to close down schools unless absolutely necessary. And finally, number four, keeping children in school for a bit longer will allow more to access testing and support both school-based adults as well as children so that they can isolate safely over the school holiday period. We all know that this has been an incredibly challenging year so far for our children and schools, as it has been for the wider community here in Newham. With vaccine-based immunity some months away for everyone, we know next term will be no easier. That's why we are working really hard now to establish a robust testing regime for schools in our borough to support them to navigate the coming months with less disruption going forward. This includes supporting all school-based staff to have tests before they return to school and extending to older children in our secondary schools as well. And we are already working closely with all schools to roll out these testing systems. So as we end the year, I really hope everyone here in Newham, young and old, acts safely over the holidays to reduce transmission of the virus in the community, so that when our children are back after the school break, they can access testing and approach the new year with optimism and hope, despite the challenges of COVID-19 living, which we all want to see an end of to in 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Fias. Item 7, announcement by the Chief Executive. Does the Chief Executive has an announcement, please?
I have no announcements to make this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Item 8, any updates by Cabinet members? Any member of the Cabinet who wishes to update Council will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. There shall be no debate or questions allowed. Does any member of the Cabinet wish to speak?
Yes, Chair, I don't know if you saw me waving.
Please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Jahan and I wish to give a council a short update in the key areas of work in our portfolio. Councillors, we're aware that the air pollution problem in Newham is the worst in the country, and this has been a priority for the council. Much discussion has taken place over the introduction of the emissions-based permit charges, but these are a part of a package of measures we have been rolling out across the borough. We've started delivering our low traffic neighbourhoods alongside most other boroughs in London. Indeed, we've introduced the first cross-border LTN in partnership with Waltham Forest. These have been expanded further, some in direct response to residents seeking to gain the benefits of quieter roads. We've already seen positive results in these initial areas. One residential road where over 7,000 vehicles were using the road daily, there's been a 90% cut in traffic. We should be bringing more schemes forward after Christmas. This would ensure we're closing off rat runs and prioritising our residential streets for the people who live there and tackling the chaos of the sat-nav shortcut. We're also moving ahead with our Healthy School Street scheme. Having introduced our first 5, a further 10 schools will benefit in January, and we're setting ambitious targets for the department to double that as we move into the spring, with the 4th phase to expand that further in the autumn. At the start of the lockdown, London had about 80 school streets. That's risen to over 450 in place or about to start, and we're determined to play our part in making streets near schools in Newham healthier and safer for our children. We have also been undertaking a full examination of our green spaces, which play a huge part in our environment, and we'll be moving forward with a new parks and green spaces plan and a new tree strategy in 2021. And I'll hand over to the Deputy Cabinet Member, Councillor Jahan, to cover other parts of the portfolio.
Thanks, James. Further to our work on
3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Further to our work on highways and green space, we have also trialled a number of new projects to improve rates of recycling in the borough. In September this year, a pilot project was started to trial a new weekly recycling service with additional materials for recycling. Simultaneously, we trialed the use of sacks against bins to assess its uptake amongst residents. Although monitoring is still ongoing, we are pleased to see a reduction in contamination by 5% in the pilot zone. The 3-year budget provided funding for recycling services to be rolled out to Newham-owned residential blocks that were previously not provided the service. The first phase will be rolled out over the course of this month and early January. As part of our Better Streets programme, 4 out of our 5 pilot schemes tackling fly tipping are complete. 2 of the most successful schemes will be rolled out borough-wide. From the results, we can see a drop in fly tipping by 2/3 in selected sites, and where successful, an average of 34% drop in fly tipping. Our officers are meeting enforcement and local councillors regularly to assess the root cause of fly tipping and tailor action plans. To help communicate our work to residents and so they are aware of the changes to services, we are working on a comprehensive communication strategy. We are pleased to have a dedicated communications officer to help deliver key messages to our residents. One of the key areas of work is air quality, but we envisage to have a streamlined communication strategy for all of our projects. The objectives are to increase awareness of Newham services, policy and projects, to increase awareness of health and environmental hazards, to highlight the success of council policy and projects. We are pleased with the progress we have made so far and undertaking work in areas that could be improved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jahan. Item 9, Councillor McCallum on overview and scrutiny committee has given his apologies, so there's nothing on item 9. Item 10, deputations. The Chief Executive has agreed to a request to have a deputation. The request is from Newham resident Mr. Liam Adam, who wishes to talk about the new parking emission permit scheme. Mr. Adam is joined by Sham, Ruparelia, and Shahidi. Mr. Adam, as you know, up to 3 of you may speak for up to a combined time of 5 minutes. Mr. Adam, please unmute yourself and present your deputation.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Where are you?
Yeah.
I need to see you.
Bottom left. There.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I can see you, Mr. Adam. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We're only allowed 5 minutes tonight, which is not long enough to convey all the arguments against this new tax, but we will try and cover the main points. Dirty emissions is a hugely important issue, and I do have alternative ideas to deal with this, which I encourage you all to ask me about. One argument made by the LBN's new tax is that every other borough has a similar charge. The main problem, the other boroughs didn't make a promise to residents that the first car permit would always be free. Residents said yes to their own RPZ consultation after being told this promise. You can all pretend that was a previous council, but the vast majority of Newham residents who own a car don't see it that way. Their trust in democracy is now further weakened, and they feel cheated yet again by politicians who make promises and don't keep them. So many people have said to me things like, Newham Council don't care about us. If you don't believe me, read the comments on the petitions I sent you links to. Apparently, the cabinet spends loads of our money hiring someone to help you guys understand democracy. Well, what a waste of money, because when 89% of us said we were against this new tax in the consultation, you went ahead and implemented it anyway. 4,600 people signed petitions and you still didn't listen. Backbenchers in your own party have asked for this new tax to be canned, and yet the mayor ignores them. What is the point of spending all the money on promoting democracy if you're going to abuse it at your convenience? LBN is implementing this new tax in the same year that TfL is introducing a policy to tackle this same issue. Our fellow residents are facing the toughest economic challenge of a generation, yet your new stealth tax comes at the same time motorists have had the financial challenges of upgrading their cars to the ULEZ compliant. I ask the mayor if she thinks it's fair to charge Newham residents 3 times more than the residents of Redbridge and more than Barking and Dagenham. I ask the mayor if she thinks it's fair that Newham motorists should cough up for budget shortfalls when it was her political colleagues who lost £40 million of our money in a dodgy deal with a football stadium. Justice wasn't done regarding the people who lost our money, yet the mayor wants us to cough up for the shortfall. I ask the mayor if she honestly believes this flawed policy complies with the LBN slogan, people at the heart of everything we do. Great governments make great policy. Instead of offering carrots to cut emissions, you're whacking us with a stick. My fellow resident, Sham, will elaborate.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Do you have somebody else to speak?
Yeah, Sham is there.
Okay, you've got 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Mr. Sham Rufarelia.
Hi there. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mr. Sham Rufarelia.
Hi there. Just to elaborate on what Liam said. So I asked for a electric charging point to be put in our street because emissions is a big problem. So I did want to buy a new car, but I haven't heard nothing, and I was put on a list. I did speak to Aisha Chaudhry about it, who put me in touch with someone else who put me on a list, but I still haven't heard nothing back from them. So I had to obviously change my car because it was not ULEZ compliant. So that's what I did. And now to find out, obviously, we're going to be penalised for that decision as well, is obviously a big problem. So I'm a bit annoyed with that side of things. I don't know. I also set up a petition about this parking charge. A lot of people said they didn't even know about the consultation. So it was quite a big problem for a lot of people. So just really a bit annoyed about the whole situation. I do also have a question. There was so many people being put on a list. I just wanted to know how many of those people actually were given a charging point, who ever was put on the list.
Can I have Shahid just for 1 minute, please?
Yep.
We just got 30 seconds left, please. Shahid.
Sorry?
He's not there, Chair.
Is Shahid here around?
No, Chair.
No, it's not.
Huh?
It's
No,
not.
Chair.
Not
He's not
so.
around.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe Mr. Ruppel wants.
Right, I've got 5 minutes for questions from the councillors.
Sorry, we haven't finished yet. Sorry, I just wanted to
Oh, you
finish.
haven't finished.
It's
I thought you had
interesting.
finished.
It was interesting. Dolly Aladani from the Equality Network spoke particularly about listening to the demands of community and pushing to electrifying. Both of us want charging points. We want cleaner air as well. And I just want to finish this point. Sorry, just very quickly. Just 1 moment, please, because we had a bit of time lost. The first are 2 professionals with a new electric SUV. The middle family have 2 children and drive an 8-year-old 4. They're both on minimum wage and walk their children to school. The third family with 4 children have a Renault diesel people carrier parked in their own forecourt. They drive their children to 2 schools daily. So tell me, who pays? Is it conceivable that you're asking the least prosperous family to pay while the more fortunate ones escape your tax? That is unfairness at the heart of this tax. And like you, we will never endorse it. Perhaps you could care to raise your hand if you think it's fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shahid.
I noticed no one put their hand up. Thank you.
We now have opportunity for members to ask any questions they may have on what you have said and for you to respond. The time allocated to councillors is 5 minutes. I've got Councillor James Hassa, please. Councillor James Hassa, to put your question to Mr. Adam, please.
I didn't raise my hand. I understand I have to do a response, but I hadn't indicated,
Oh,
Chair.
you don't have the question. Okay. And now I've got Madam Mayor. Have you got a question for Mr. Adam, please?
Chair, it's not so much a question, it's a response to some of the assertions that Mr. Adam has made with regards to the emissions-based parking. Some of the assertions that policy that are incorrect, both factually and also incorrect in terms of
the mayor, ask if there's any
questions and the democratic mandate.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, can I just
administration has with regards
to ask questions first and then you can respond at the end. Sorry about that. Councillor Gray, have you got a question, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I do thank Liam and Sham for coming to this meeting. It's very rare that we actually have real residents come and speak and deputise. However, this is a really, really complicated and difficult issue. And the council has been trying to find ways to alleviate the cost with this 20% off for the first year. And are going to be closely monitoring, backbench councillors monitoring what is going to be happening, thanks to Councillor Susan Masters. However, I'm trying to see if there is any compromise in this. Are residents opposed to the principle of paying a first vehicle charge, or are they opposed to emission charging in the present post-COVID world?
Well, the problem is I haven't heard any evidence that this new charge will cut emissions. I mean, lots of drivers already have to pay a road tax. They pay petrol tax. You've got a hell of a lot of workers in London, including myself, who use a car for work. I know Sham uses the car to, I hope he doesn't mind me speaking on his behalf, to take some disabled relatives to hospital clinics. Most of the time he gets public transport. I hate driving. I avoid it whenever I can. I ride my push bike all around Newham. But however, I have to get 160 kilograms of equipment to work, and there's no other way of doing that. Newham is full of couriers, taxi drivers, other people that use their vehicles, builders. There's no simple solution yet on how we get around the fact that our economy is based around vehicle transport. And even those people that don't have a car, you're all participating in too. Every time you go to a shop, every time you use a service, you're contributing to motor air pollution. I would say, to clarify your question, I've said it in my early petition, I don't mind paying the charge as long as we've got charging points. We don't have charging points. So you're whacking us with a stick, but you're not providing the charging points. And that's what's interesting thing about Ms. Aldini's presentation at the start of this meeting. She talked so imperative about the importance of having electrifying of the system. So I would seriously ask you to all reconsider this policy, can it? And let's get some charging points in. I want charging points. I want clean cars. We all want clean air in Newham. It's a shared goal. And I'm happy to work with you all to do it. But please don't bring this tax in next year, because you're going to hurt a lot of people really badly.
Thank you. Councillor Masters, very quickly, we've only got 2 minutes left. And then Councillor Sugar and Councillor Tripp.
Thanks, Chair.
Just ask questions, please, quickly.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank Sham and Mr. Adam for leading this deputation to council tonight. Liam's a neighbour of mine from East Ham South, and I know him as someone deeply committed to green policies and improved environment. Overall, I share his concerns about elements of this policy. Looking at the agenda, people can see that at one point I'd hoped to bring a motion asking for a pause and review of the evidence at such a difficult time. If I've paused this pause, it's only because I feel there is a time and place to do this, and that as we're about to face a catalogue of difficult choices, Any decision about the model's future can only be made as part of a wider consideration of our budget as a whole. In the meantime, though, I'm happy to be part of Overview's review of the model that will be tabling a series of recommendations later this week, and to be involved at looking at how we can develop parking policies that are fair but effective in improving Newham's environment going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Sugar, very quickly, we've only got about 2 minutes left, 1 minute now.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to Sam Rupelia and Leah Madam for bringing the views of people, because sometimes we may be detached from what the common man are thinking about when we are thinking about much more about the emission and the climate and green environment. But we need to think about it. Is my personal view. Also, I always keep my mind towards the greener environment. But we need to think about the people who we are serving. And most of the working class people, extended families, and their socio-economic background might be the cause. And we need to. I think we need to. We should have a concern about the petition people representing. And one more thing I would like to suggest: that whatever charges we are collecting from the emission, we should be kept for the more cleaner road and safe passage for the bike users, and the more charging points. That will implicate our commitment towards this cleaner energy policy. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Tripp, we have got only 1 minute to ask your question before I go to the mayor. I've got Aisha Chowdhury as well. So if you're asking a question, just ask a question very quickly, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Adam, for your petition. I know we've been in touch about some of the issues related to this around social justice in particular. But I was keen to hear your views on this issue of cross-subsidy, because one of the many things that bothers me at the moment about our first parking permit being free is that it the parking scheme, and the RPZs are necessary if we don't want the whole of Newham to become a car park for the whole of Essex. And so I guess I'd just like to press you a little bit on the fact that at the moment, people who don't own cars are paying toward them, which those who do.
Thank you, Councillor Tripp. Well, my question would be, how much does it cost to administer the RPZ each year, and how much money is made by the council from parking fines, towing fines, fines for cars that drive down roads that are now closed to through traffic? I'd be very surprised if your RPZ costs more than the money you gain from the revenue raising from all the fining. And if it does cost more, then I think there's something really wrong with your administrative process, that it's not more streamlined and efficient. Yeah. I'm happy to take more questions. This is an important issue. We could go a couple minutes over the agenda. I'm happy to.
Still got a very busy agenda.
I think Councillor Garfield has a question.
Thank you. Councillor Aisha Chowdhury, another 1 minute. Very quickly, your question, Councillor Aisha Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to say thank you to both the guest speaker here tonight. My job as a councillor is represent local resident is you. I'm quite sort of like surprised to hear that Sayem did not had a response, or he is not happy with the response. I am quite sure my colleague Councillor James Asso will be replying to both of you, but you may understand that as backbencher we can represent your views, we can push on things, but then it's a collective decision. But when we not only you but many residents have been asking for the charging points, and I was under the impression that relevant director or from the department, you must have the response, especially at least about the date when you can have a charging point, because no point of having a car if you cannot charge the car.
If you don't ask a question, please.
Yeah, the question is, if you did not have a reply, did you manage to communicate with your local councillors again, including myself? If I have a reply, I would have communicated with the director or the cabinet member, but I would like to ask if you had the chance to email us again, saying that you did not have information. Thank you.
I'm over the time, but I'm going to allow Councillor Joshua Garfield, just very quickly, please, your question, not a statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for both Sham and Liam. I appreciate their concerns, and I do sympathise with them. But in an area where driving has been the cheapest mode of transport in London for decades, and we do have to address the imbalance of people who cycle, who park their bike or cycle, who put their home, who use the bus and train, subsidising motorists in the capital. And I would like to know, from Liam and Sham's perspective, respectfully, how do you think that we should address that imbalance as a council, if not through charging as other councils do for the first vehicle?
Well, I hope you don't mind, Sham. I'll start the answer to that. Thank you for your question, Councillor Garfield. Firstly, I'd like to say driving a car isn't cheaper than getting public transport. It's a lot more expensive. Insurance costs in Newham are extremely high because of the high crime rate and car theft. Petrol or diesel is extremely expensive. You have a car tax, you have maintenance cost. I can guarantee you driving is not affordable at all. And for my first 10 years in London, I didn't have a car and only got a car because I can't do my job without one. In terms of how you subsidise, it was interesting because I saw in the news recently talking about I think Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, was saying that they weren't getting enough revenue back from petrol excise. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, being funded back into roads in London, and that money was coming out of TfL budget. So, I mean, this is a question we should be putting to our MPs to put to the Prime Minister, why we aren't getting more of the money in London from petrol tax to spend on roads rather than it coming from TfL budget, which should be spent on trains, buses and cycle lanes. So it's extremely complex issue. And I know we're running out of time. I do appreciate the chair for giving us a few more minutes, but I am serious about sitting down with you and having a proper discussion how we can look at a better way of doing this. Sorry, Sham, did you want to say something? I think you might be mute, Sham, for some reason.
I just wanted to respond to what Aisha Chaudhry asked. I didn't get a response from the council. All I got was to say that they will be in contact, and I haven't heard nothing since. And I didn't subsequently chase it because I didn't expect them to actually get back to me. Furthermore, I did ask for a charging point so I could have an electric car, but obviously I didn't get a response. So then that led me to buy a petrol car, which met with the ULEZ compliance.
Thank you, Sham. Now I'll have the Cabinet Member of Environment, Councillor James Sasa.
Just to clarify, the rule is that either the Mayor or a person nominated by them can speak now, but not both. So just give the opportunity to the Mayor and their lead member to decide who is going to speak.
Can I find out who is going to speak, the Mayor or Councillor James Sasa?
I would suggest that it's the Cabinet lead, albeit I recognise, Chair, that there's some particular comments that have been directed at me. And if I can just say, I'm more than happy to meet Mr. Adam and the other resident colleague to discuss outside of this meeting, just to really sort of address some of the concerns that he's raised, but also some of the misrepresentations of what's been proposed. But I appreciate your contribution. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam.
Thank you. I'm unsure what your misrepresentations you believe they are, but
it's okay. I'm going to ask Councillor James Sasa to say something as the lead member. Councillor James Sasa.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure how long I've got, so if you can just indicate if I'm running out of time. If you can just indicate if I'm running out of time. So,
running out of time.
He's got 3 minutes. He's got 3 minutes. 3 minutes, James.
I've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and be concise as possible. Obviously, there's a lot of issues brought up in there. Just firstly, thank you to both of the residents who've come and brought the deputation, and I've listened very carefully to what you said, and I think covered a lot of issues. I think within that, I mean, it has been acknowledged by councillors who spoke as well as yourselves that this is a complicated issue. We brought this motion forward, or we brought this measure forward earlier in the year as part of our 3-year budget cycle, as we are one of only 2 boroughs that don't currently charge for permits, yet we are in the position of the borough with the worst air pollution in the country and some of the highest asthma rates for under 18s. What we've been discovering recently is that not only does that create long-term health conditions, but it also is exacerbating the situation in regards to COVID, both in terms of people getting it, but also the impact from that. And there's some evidence coming out of that now. We're seeing this week the impact that air pollution can have, particularly on children with asthma. People will be following the situation we've got in Lewisham in South London with the inquest in relation to the young girl who died a few years ago. And I think all council will be watching very carefully to see the outcome of that. You've made a number of points, and I think, you know, they deserve proper answer, and the mayor has said she's happy to meet with you, as am I. In terms of the questions raised around the electric charging point, which I think is extremely important, a lot of this comes down to resources. You made the quite important point about the vehicle excise duty in London, which the Mayor of London has raised this week. £500 million leaves London to subsidise roads in the rest of the country, and the Mayor is arguing for that money to come back, though there are potentially new measures coming in to try and replace that. We certainly need more support from the regional and central government in terms of rolling out charging points. We have got some money on that position now, and we've started that process. So we've rolled out 80 double chargers, which in the last couple of months, which creates 160 charging points. We have further money we'll be rolling out early in the new year, and we're working with a number of companies to look at it rapidly expanding the amount of charging we've got. All councils are facing that difficulty, but I think during 2021 you will see an increase, and we're looking at more fast chargers, more intermediate chargers, the ones we just introduced, but also moving to lamppost charging to create more opportunities for on-street for people to charge overnight. In regards to the specific question Sham has raised, I apologise that you haven't had a response, and I will get your email address and I will reply to you this week, and so we can have a conversation, but I'm happy to meet you both on that. The ULEZ is coming in this year. It only tackles one type of pollution. It doesn't tackle all that we need to do to tackle the serious air pollution we have in the borough. And it's why councils are moving to emissions-based parking charging. 18 already done, so will be the 19th. There are a couple of others currently going through this process, and I think what you're going to see over the next few years, given the government's announcements on emissions, is more councils moving to kind of emissions-based schemes to have to deliver this. We understand, and Councillor Gray has made the point, as has Councillor Masters, of the difficulties at the moment, which is why we brought in the 20% discount for the first year to help people through this situation. And I know backbench councillors and scrutiny, we had a very good session on it last week at scrutiny, are going to be involved in this, and we're going to have some long serious discussions when we come back from the Christmas break on how we make this work better, looking at moving to instalment payments and other things. But I am more than happy to have further meetings and discuss with you. It's quite important, as you saw in my
1 minute left, Councillor.
okay, I will wrap up. As I hope you heard in terms of my cabinet briefing, this isn't just the only measure we're taking as part of a package of measures looking at a whole range of things. It is a complicated picture, and we're working with other boroughs too. This isn't unique to us, but we are trying to deliver it in the next few months. I think, and I've said it before to council, I think the first duty of any elected official is protect the health of their residents and put first the well-being of the people they represent. Sometimes that requires us to make difficult decisions. I'm not saying that this isn't a difficult decision and a difficult way forward, but the medium to long-term benefits in terms of what it will help do as part of the package of measures and what we're doing with regional government in terms of tackling emissions are hugely important in the health of our residents. We know they have the worst health outcomes on many of these issues because we have the worst air pollution. Once we know that, we have to tackle it. And I appreciate the short-term difficulties, which is why we've got the 20% discount to help through that. But as I say, I am more than happy to have discussions, and we'll be working with councillors in the new year to make sure we can progress this in a way that will bring benefits all round. So, but again, thank you for your considered time, and we will make sure you get a response. And I will make sure I pick up the electric charging point and get the email address. Thank you, Chair.
Sham, for coming to give your deputation. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 11, petitions. Does any member have a petition they wish to present to council? Please just raise your hand, please. Councillor Zubair Gulamas. Councillor Zubair.
Thank you, Chair. I received a petition from the East Ham High Street Note from the businesses and local residents. The petitions to the sign a number of the Newham undersigning, which is making the no objection to the policy to suspend the parking bay along High Street North East Ham. Its impact has been very determined, and local businesses who has had a suffer a great deal due to the policy. Trade has been lost directly because of this under on the macro in the punishing decision. We call for the bay to be immediately restored and assumed from the council. The mayor that never again will they make such a directed action without first consultation local businesses and residents. We note with the greens, we note that the Green Street Upper Line and other area has the parking bay reinstructs. Why not in High Street North? The signature to the petition are resident, business, and concerns. So, Chair, I request you to Mayor and officer looking this petition is tried to sort it as soon as possible. Is very helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any other petitions? Anybody else with another petition? Okay, thank you. The Democratic Services will receive the petition to pass on to the relevant director for consideration. Thank you. Item 12, members' questions. I've received questions from members, and these, together with the answers by the mayor, appropriate cabinet member, are stated in the order paper, which was published on the council's website as a supplementary agenda this afternoon, and also emailed to all members. First question is from Councillor Clark to Councillor Paul, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services. Councillor Clark, do you have a supplementary question based on the answers received in relation to question 1?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, Chair. The question I have, and thank you for Councillor Paul for giving me the answer, or whoever wrote it for him. But basically, I've two issues. First of all, I'm very pleased to see that we're looking to conserve this beautiful listed building in the first instance. But also, I'm a little bit perturbed to see that we've spent somewhere in the region of £400,000 to look after the security and the roof of that building. You know, that's now around £200,000 a year. And that's what worries me. I know you're looking to put a bid to the lottery fund, but that always takes time. And to me, the clock is ticking. The amount of money we're spending to make that building secure, and obviously another work that building might need over a period of time. So although I see the general sort of journey that you're trying to take the building under, but I think it's costing us, particularly at this time, a great deal of money that we might not be able to afford. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And I call upon Councillor Paul to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the money is there to secure the building. If we hadn't spent the money, the building would be unsecure, and therefore that would be an issue for us. Obviously, we did have Nando's who were going to take over the building, but obviously that opportunity is gone. And as the answer says there, we are looking at all options to reinvigorate and use the building.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. Question 2 is from Councillor Salim Patel to Councillor Paul, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services. Councillor Patel, you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to question 2.
Yes, Chair, I do have. Yes, Chair, I do have a supplementary question. Chair, really concerned at the cost of empty buildings in the borough and the time taken to bring them back into use. Chair, my question is, do you have an audit of the number of empty buildings and how long they have been empty?
Councillor Paul.
Was the word, can I just clarify the question, Chair? Do I have an audit?
You didn't understand the question. Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, Chair, I do. Do you have an audit of the number of empty buildings and how long they have been empty?
Right. I have
About the empty buildings.
Yeah, I have a spreadsheet which lists all our empty buildings in the borough. Is that what you're referring to, rather than an audit?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, because an audit is a specific thing. So what is it you want to know? So I'm clear. If you're asking me, do I have a register of the empty buildings in the borough, then the answer is yes.
Okay, that's fine, Chair. I've got the answer. Yeah, I wanted to know the audit of the empty buildings.
He asked you.
He's answered the question.
He's answered. Is that okay, Councillor Patel?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's okay by me.
Answer?
Fine by me, Chair.
You are. Thank you very much. Questions, please, from Councillor Mas Patel to the Mayor. Councillor Patel, do you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to question 3?
Sorry, Chair, just unmuting myself. Yes, I do. Thank you for the answer. However, it doesn't actually answer my concerns in the question. I understand that when a court makes directions, there are a number of variations in what it can order and the response that any individual or any local authority in this instance will need to take. My concern, and it's in the question, is about implementation, the preparedness of the council to ensure that we get a governance referendum to take place on the 6th of May. And my question, if you look back on it, is not answered by the response. What I'm actually referring to, and it's open obviously in terms of the response that I get, is will the council make sure that it's completely prepared to make sure this referendum takes place on the 6th of May? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Fias, please, you want to respond?
Thank you very much. I mean, I'll in part respond, but I'm going to need to defer this to the monitoring officer, the chief executive. The chief executive ultimately is the principal party pertaining to this matter. A party outside of the council has sought a judicial review, and I'm not involved in that process. But I will say this, Councillor Patel, you will be clear there is a manifesto commitment, and I have repeatedly said a number of times that there will be a referendum by the end of the third year of this administration. And within that framework, I have the assurance and the confidence that council officers will engage with this process in the most expedient way possible in order to ensure that that manifesto commitment is maintained. Now, that's outside of any situation that we might find ourselves in next summer with regards to our challenge of COVID-19. And today there's been, the very disturbing news of this new variant that has been discovered. But suffice to say, by way of my conclusion on this comment, and then I'll pass through the chair to either the monitoring officer or the chief executive, because that's rightly where the question needs to be directed. There is an absolute commitment to ensure that there is a referendum in line with the manifesto commitment. And I'd also just remind councillor colleagues that notwithstanding this judicial review that's been pursued by parties outside of this council, albeit I know that there had previously been a declaration of a conflict of interest by one councillor with regards to this matter. There has been a determination by members of this body here, full council, with regards to the alternative governance model that is going to be put forward to a referendum, and that has, been drawn from a very engaged debate the councillors of of council have been undertaking over recent months. So thank you very much, Chair, and I'll pass through to the monitoring officer or the chief executive as appropriate, Chair.
It's Daniel Finnick here. I'm probably in the best position to try and provide further information as best as we can. But in the full knowledge, and I'm sure Councillor Patel accepts that this is entirely hypothetical because we have to wait for the judge's decision in this particular case. So the obvious immediate answer is if the council succeeds in its defence, which we hope we will do, we will continue the current preparations to hold the referendum on the 6th of May on the basis of the question between a mayoralty and a committee model, which is obviously implementing the decision of full council. The hypotheticals arise if the in any shape or form the claimant succeeds, because whilst at first it's entirely up to the judge what remedy he grants, but he would have to look at the statutory regime for holding referendums based on a petition. And the first stage would be that the claimant's case is still that the signatures have to be validated. And then secondly, there are a number of different statutory time limits to hold a referendum. It is anticipated that if the court were to uphold the claimant's position, then clearly what they would seek to do is try to give effect to the claimant's position, and may look at those statutory time limits and the council's ability to deliver that and deliver a petition on the 6th of May. But there's so many hypotheticals in there that it's impossible to go through each and every single one of them, but I'm more than happy to speak to Councillor Patel outside of this meeting, but hopefully that additional information will help.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I will be more than happy to have that meeting with you. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. Question first from Councillor Hudson to Councillor Paul, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services. Councillor Hudson, do you have a supplementary question based on the answer in relation to question 4?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to thank Councillor Paul for the answer to my question. I've got a question and a slight comment. My question is that looking from the council papers, there are going to be 50 lollipop men and women who are going to lose their jobs. So when will they be informed that they're losing their jobs? And I just note that from the answers that have come from the order paper, we're talking about £1 million being spent just from those questions on empty buildings and digging up roads and putting them in again.
Councillor Paul.
I got the first part, the second part I was writing, so I'm going to ask Les to repeat it. On the one about lollipop people you refer to, I think that's more of a James Asser question. He's doing some detailed work at the moment, and that work is in conjunction to the operation of the low traffic neighbourhoods and how they would evolve in the next short, medium and long term. So that's the question more for James. On your second one, I only got half of it next, but can you repeat it, please?
No, I was just totting up the figures from the order paper about empty buildings and digging up roads and putting them in again, and it came to about over £1 million.
Right.
I was just making a comment, that's all.
Okay.
In the context of the 50 lollipop men and women are going to lose their jobs.
Thank you for the comment.
Councillor Paul, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want me to come in on that?
If you could, about when you're going to inform the lollipop men and women.
Chair,
From Councillor Hudson again to Councillor Paul.
Councillor.
Supplementary question?
Sorry, Councillor Paul had deferred part of the question related to my portfolio, so he was deferring the answer to me, Chair, if that's okay.
You want to answer Councillor James Asser then?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Hudson. So just the premise of your question, I'm afraid, is wrong. We're not about to sack lots and lots of lollipop ladies. As I explained on the councillor's budget briefing, part of that, there is a review and it's for discussion. It's something I'm very interested in hearing ward members' views on. We, as I made clear in the update earlier, we're making a number of changes to streetscape, both in terms of low traffic neighbourhoods and healthy school streets. There hasn't been a review for some time of where school crossing patrols are, and in some places they will be in places where we have closed the road to traffic, so there may be a review of that. So it is in there as for discussion with councillors as part of the budget discussions, because there is a potential to make some savings in terms of if you've got a road closed to traffic, you're needed, but that is not a decision taken to sack lots and lots of school crossing patrols, and I'm sure this will come up in, I know I'm seeing budget working party early in the new year. I'm sure that'll come up then. I'm happy to have a full discussion on it with you then, but it's a slight misunderstanding of the proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Asa. Question 5, Councillor Hudson. Do you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to question 5?
Yes, I'd like to thank again Councillor Paul for his answer. I suppose my question is, there is, given that there is a possibility that there'll be reduced demand for school meals and the possibility that Juniper may need to reduce their staff, will that be included in the risk register, and would there be a full equal opportunity, equalities impact assessment taken out on this action? Because a majority of the employees in Juniper Ventures are low-paid women, and it's the law of unintended consequences about a number of posts that could be lost if there's a reduction in demand for school meals because of the pricing regime.
Okay, I'll answer that. That's an assertion which might not be based in fact. If you read the question, Lester, it actually takes that point on. And it says, obviously, there are other things happening with Juniper, and obviously they're winning more work. So it's in the question, the answer in the question preempts your question to me there. On the other one about the risk register, obviously I need to check it, but obviously Juniper is a separate organisation, and they might have their own risk register, which is separate from the councils. So that is something I'll go away and look at, but I can assure you, Michael Hales, the managing director of Juniper, is alert to the issues and is already, how can I put it, looking at the future for his business as any good managing director would do.
It is 100% owned by Newham Council, though.
It's a separate company, right?
It's 100% owned by Newham Council.
But look, I'll check whether they have a separate risk register. Something I don't know off the top of my head, but I will check that for you. But obviously, in terms of the impact on their future business, that is something I know Juniper are looking at. But as you look at the answer to the question which you posed to me, they are winning work all the time. So that situation, the hypothesis, the scenario you mentioned, might not even occur.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Paul. Question 6 is from Councillor Shah to Councillor Mohammed, Cabinet Member for Housing. Councillor Shah, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Yes, Chair.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Councillor Ruiz for the written response. I do understand that NRPF is a national government policy. However, 1989 and 2004 Children's Act state that welfare and safeguarding responsibilities lie with the local authority. So does that mean these families will receive housing support after winter months as well, or will they be asked to find their own accommodation?
Councillor Mohammed, would you like to respond?
It's Councillor Ruiz, actually.
One of you anyway.
Councillor Shah, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I'm quite happy to find out from the director and give you a response in writing if that would be helpful. I can't imagine that we were going to turf these people out onto the streets. So I'm assuming that their accommodation will continue.
Thank you, Councillor Ruiz.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Mohammed, you don't want to add anything?
Nothing at all, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 7 is from Councillor Shah to Councillor Ruiz, again, Cabinet Member for Education, Children and Young People. Councillor Shah, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Chair. I do.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to again thank Councillor Ruiz for the response. I have to say it's really great that this council has decided that we are going to be giving up to £45 to our children to tackle the holiday hunger. So well done. Thank you, Councillor Ruiz. But just a comment, I would appreciate if you can inform us backbenchers how these school vouchers or luncheon vouchers can be obtained so we can inform the residents and the parents when they come to ask the question from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shah. My understanding is that the vouchers, which will be eligible for all those children who are in receipt of free school meals, will be administered by the schools. I understand that the vouchers were sent to the schools at the end of last week. So they will be administering those. But we also recognise that there will be a significant number of children and families who will not be eligible for those vouchers, and the schools and their social workers will be able to refer to them to the Newham Food Alliance, and in some cases we have arranged for vouchers to be given to additional children, but I can get a much fuller response on how that system is going to work and come back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Ruiz.
Thank you, Councillor Shah and Councillor Ruiz. Question 8 and 9 are from Councillor Abdul Muhit to Councillor Asa, but Councillor Muhit has given his apologies, so the right to supplementary falls. Question 10 is from Councillor Moniba Khan to Councillor Paul, Cabinet Member for Finance. Councillor Khan, do you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to question 10?
No, I would like to thank Councillor Zulfikar Ali for the answer, and there's no supplementary questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moniba Khan.
Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Councillor 11, sorry, Councillor 11. Question 11 from Councillor Tekepurai to Councillor Ruiz. Councillor Tekepurai, do you have a supplementary question based on the answer received in relation to question 11?
Thank you, Chair, for the answer. I'm happy with the answer, but the problem is that with the answer is sugar-coated with a lot of information, but we undermined that more than 3/4 of the children are going to be affected by this measure, and this is going to be a wider implication on our coming generations, because of the free school meal not only tackling the poverty, but it can be tackled malnutrition and providing hot food during the cold weather. And this is going to be denied for the major chunk of our future generations. And I'm going to ask the supplementary question is that what we are going to tackle these problems. This is the major issues, and how you going to tackle these 14,000 children going to hunger because of these measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sugar. You need to note that we have not yet made a decision on whether we are going to cease the Eat for Free scheme, which should not be confused with the free school meals scheme. And we are due to go out to consultation this week. And then we are also looking at other ways in which we could mitigate the proposal of saving 1.9 million. And I will be doing a written briefing to all councillors before Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 12 is from Councillor Tekekura to Councillor Asa. Do you have a supplementary question based on the answers received in relation to question 12, Councillor Tekekura?
Thank you, Chair. So I've been alarmed by the situation. You might be see this picture. I don't know though. This was taken from the when the school was dismissed. It was a peak time and a big lorry driver driving into the exact the time when the school was dispersing. And this was happening. It's not only one day happening. It is every day because of the increased delivery of goods around our residents. Because of the COVID-19 or the changing business pattern. So we have to urgently take these measures to implement all the schools, irrespective of we going for very piecemeal way. I appreciate the intention by our cabinet member James and our deputy cabinet Lilufa, but these things should be addressed very quickly rather than going very piecemeal. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Asa to respond.
Thank you. I couldn't see the photograph, but if you want to email it to me, I will happily look at it. I absolutely agree with you in terms of rolling out more of the school streets. The ones we've done so far have been successful, as I clear in the answer and said we're doing another 10 in January. So far we've done all these in conjunction with the schools. What I'd be very interested, I know a number of councillors already contacted me, as a number of schools. I'd be interested to hear from councillors where they think this scheme would work with schools in their wards. Schools have already been contacted, I know a number of councils have, so we can roll that out, because there are some significant benefits for this, both in terms of not just the air pollution, but the road safety and children going to schools. And it's also having an additional benefit in terms of social distancing outside the school gates, giving people more space. So I agree with you in terms of the benefits this brings. As I said, it's been an explosion of these around London since the lockdown, and we're to do more. One of the difficulties all the councils are facing is the demand is now so high. We've got delays in getting cameras delivered. We've ordered some already, so I know some of our neighbours have got quite long waits, and that is holding things up. So, but we're going to roll this out in 2021 as fast as we can. So I would be very interested to hear from councillors about schools in your ward, and put us in touch with the head teachers, and we'll be contacting. We've done some assessments already, so there is an ambitious plan to get as many as we can during 2021. But I look forward to the support of ward councillors in terms of delivering that.
Thank you, Councillor Asa. Item 13.
Cabinet member.
Item 13, questions by the public. Questions by the public. We have received 5 questions from members of the public. The questions submitted and the answers are those which appear in tonight's order paper. The answers will be emailed to the questionnaires and will appear in the minutes of this meeting. Since members of the public are watching on the meeting on YouTube, but not present at the meeting, I'll simply ask if any member of the cabinet has any further thing to add to their already published answers in the order paper. Any cabinet member wish to add anything from what the answers you gave? Yeah, Councillor James Asa.
I will, there are lots of them for me, and I'm not going to go through them all, because obviously most of them touch on things we've discussed at quite a lot of length this evening. But I did want to take this one opportunity just to pick something I missed earlier, which Councillor Thekapura asked about in terms of the income from the emissions-based parking scheme, and it relates to a number of these questions. That is all ring-fenced for transport and highways projects, so all the money raised will go back into schemes around highways, improving our pavements and things like the Healthy School Street scheme, so all that will be reinvested. So it is not going into a general pot, it goes back into the area it's coming from to invest in our highways in terms of maintenance and improving them. So I hope that reassures people.
Okay, thank you. Any other cabinet member? Thank you very much. Question, item 14, speeches from members. I've received from Councillor Mumtaz Khan that she wishes to make a speech this evening on the matter of Bangladeshi women in Newham. Councillor Khan, you have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Khan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, the month of December is a festive month, and a lot of people celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah. But it's a very special month for the Bangladeshis because we celebrate, the Bangladeshis around the world celebrate the month of independence. And 16th of December is Independence Day for Bangladesh. So I wish to say Joy Bangla and Joy Bangladesh to everybody from Bangladesh who are celebrating the Independence Month. The Bangladeshis first started arriving in the UK in large numbers in the 1970s and mostly settled in and around East London. However, some Bengalis had been present in the country as early as 1920s and earlier. And I'm one of the grandchild of a seaman who worked in the ship. During the 1970s and 80s, the community experienced institutionalized racism and racial attacks by organized far-right groups such as the National Front and the British National Party. In 1978, many of you have possibly heard about the incident on Altabali, a 25-year-old who was murdered in a racial attack as he walked home from work. The murder took place a few roads away from where I grew up. My memories of walking to school was awfully frightening. The name Altabali became associated with movement of resistance against racial attacks and remains linked with this struggle for human rights to this day. Fighting back is what we did. Our mothers, sisters, our families joined rallies, demonstration, physically chasing after groups of thugs with a funny shape knife, which we call it the da, in order to protect their vulnerable families and homes being burnt down. My childhood fears did not stop me there. Instead, they helped me by channeling trauma into productive activism. And this is why I'm here today. Bangladeshis share cultural commonalities with their Indian and Pakistani friends, neighbors and cousins in Britain. But our British experience is very different. On measurement of disadvantage in education, housing, career prospect, it is Bangladeshis who fall almost always to the bottom against not just their Asian peers, but against Black and minority ethnic group. A recent government inquiry in June found people of Bangladeshi origin face the greatest danger of dying from coronavirus. No one has yet put their finger on it, but it's not simply that we eat too many sugary, syrupy sweets, leading to high rates of diabetes. A further report by the Rani Mead Trust found that 24% of British Bangladeshis live in overcrowded housing, by far the highest percentage of any ethnic minority group. Multi-generational household and poor condition create the necessary backdrop for COVID-19 to hit this community with fatal frequency. I would go one step further to say that health inequality and racism is a huge contributor. Today, over 45,000 Bangladeshi live in Newham. They are the second ethnic minority group here. Most Bangladeshi women do not have a paid work, and multiple barriers they face to employment are largely unaddressed by mainstream policies, leading to social and exclusion to poverty. A report by Manchester Metropolitan University revealed that Bangladeshi women have a keen interest in economic activities. The women they met had a long-standing desire to undertake paid work. They want to earn money for their families, contribute to society, and engage in wider public life through economic activities. A small minority of Bangladeshi women are doing well, and progress is slow. And I'm pleased to say that there are 4 MPs in Parliament, a female judge, a baroness, and there are some assistant directors in children's services around local authorities. But can I just have 1 more minute, Chair? My main point that I would like to make in my speech is in Newham, we cannot hide away from our responsibility, and it is time to break these barriers. The glass ceilings that we must encourage, we must create and make space for Bangladeshi women in Newham to play a full role in economic and public life. Thank you, Chair, for that extra time.
Okay, thank you, Mumtaz Khan. Thank you, Councillor Mumtaz Khan. Item 15, motions. The motion listed in the agenda for the meeting has been withdrawn by Councillor Masters as mover of the motion. Thank you.
Chair.
If you can remind the members with their raised hands that no questions are allowed to speak. If you can remind the members with their raised hands that no questions are allowed to speak.
Okay. I think possibly Councillor Islam may want to move to extend the duration of the meeting.
So
well, if you ask Councillor Islam if he wants to do that.
Councillor Islam, do you want to extend the standing orders, please? Where are you? Councillor Islam?
We lost him.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Chair, can I move standing orders by 30 minutes under Rule 9?
Okay, thank you very much. Any seconder? Thank you, Councillor Aisha Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a correction.
Seconding the.
Sorry?
You are seconding the extension of the standing order.
Yes, I did.
Seconder. Yeah. For the standing order. Who is the seconder for the extension of the standing order?
I can second.
Is somebody seconding or Jane Loftus?
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Jane Loftus.
So you just need to put it to the vote. They just need to approve. You need to vote.
Oh, do you agree?
Yeah.
Put your hands up, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you. So we are extending the standing orders by half an hour. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick point. Councillor Khan has made a very nice speech, but the problem is that Independence Day of Bangladesh is on 26th of March, not in December. I thought it is quite important and significant to make sure that we understand and remember the correct date. Date of the Independence Day of Bangladesh is 26th of March. It's not in December. We have been celebrating in UK, in London for many more years, many years, over 30 years we've been celebrating Independence Day. And even in Newham Town Hall, we used to raise flag of Bangladesh on 26th of March. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Aisha, for that amendment. Thank you. Item 16, just to remind everybody that if they've got a question, please, you have to raise your hand up so that we can see whether we can see your hand up from the.
Chair, can I add something to the council?
Yeah.
There's no question. There's no question.
No.
There's no question.
No, I'm on item 16. Yeah. I'm on item 16. I'm just telling people if they've got a question on item 16 to raise their hand up so that I can see you. Okay, item 16, draft and provisional budget 2021-2022 and 2022-2023. Councillor Paul, please move the recommendation in the report. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report setting out the budget proposals for the period you highlighted, Chair. And also what it sets out is where we are as an administration and where we've come from since March, when we set that for the first time in many years, a 3-year budget which looked to the medium term. In setting this budget, it'd be useful to remind members in terms of we set a first budget in 2019, which was a sort of stable budget to sort of get in play the administration's policies and financial plans. And the major thing when we came in March, we put that budget, which was all about community wealth building, living wage, and really provided the underpinning for what this administration is about. That was in March. and as on the March the 2nd, and as we know, on I think it was in the 3rd to 4th week of March, was all told to go home, and we are there now, and COVID came. In summary, and I'll say for the people online, up until last March, COVID had cost us just under £60 million, and obviously we haven't got to the end of the financial year, and as the Mayor articulated tonight, London is about to go into Tier 3, and there's a new COVID variant, and obviously we're about to go into Christmas. But what we've done here is set out with all those uncertainties, those risks of the pandemic, what we're going to do and where we are financially. As you take people through the report, it sets out the narrative and the story about how we got there, also in terms of the recommendations for this report. But more importantly, I just want to bring to members' attention and the members of the public, it sets a story about where Newham is in comparison to where our other London boroughs are. It does set out some of the uncertainties of the pandemic, and also it attempts to give a narrative to how we have to amend and change our medium-term financial review. Also, because of that, we do have a savings target in March, obviously due to government austerity. I think on average, Newham has lost about £245 million since 2010 due to the lack of government funding. That's nearly £250 million, which has not been available to our residents over the last 10 years, which has had an impact. And as we know, COVID has impacted Newham's community very hard because of the nature of our population, nature of our deprivation. And it's something we are taking really, really seriously. As you can see in the report, it sets out what the challenges are, what we're going to do, what we could possibly do around the housing revenue account and the future. So, Chair, and also what I'll bring members' attentions to, it does set out, there's been some questions about our reserves. Obviously that's set out on page small 21, big 65, depending on what version you're looking at. It sets out about the reserves, and also it sets out the schedule of savings in the report and how we intend to bring some stability back. But what I will say, this budget is about recovery, it is about hope, it is about sticking to our principles, it is about making sure we build the homes, which is the manifesto commitment. It is about making sure that we still pay the living wage for our care workers, and it is about investing in our people and making sure we provide the services for our residents. And as we know, we have to be agile in our budget. Obviously, our residents are going to need us to stand behind them, but also what we've got to do in our various stakeholder groups is to continue to make our case to government, but we still need government funding. Newham has been underfunded for a number of years. It was only 6 weeks in October they adjusted our financial settlement we got, because they finally acknowledged the mayor's and the cabinet's campaign about them recognising our deputation.
1 minute left, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So what I'll say, I commend this report to full council. It does set out where we are. It does set out how we attempt to deal with the issue of COVID, which is once a generation, or once in 100 years, or once in 300 years impact. But we have still got a very good financial story to tell, and more importantly, this is a budget which enables us as an administration to do good and stand by our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a second? The Mayor, please, to second. You've got 3 minutes to speak. Mayor Fias.
Sorry, I've second.
You second. Okay, thank you. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? Just raise your hand if you want to speak, please. Any member wish to speak? Gone. Nobody wants to speak. Thank you. Councillor Paul, do you have the right of last reply? Do you wish to say anything further?
No, I just thank for the members for their support and also for their continuing engagement. We've got a couple of months where we'll go into public consultation now, where we'll be meeting key stakeholder groups. And this is an opportunity to go out there, explain what we're trying to do. But more importantly, we have some challenging issues and financial issues to take on. But we're going to be transparent as part of the administration and show members what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. We will now move to the vote. In a few moments, for those joining us from Zoom, the voting options for, against, or abstain will appear on the screen. You have 30 seconds to vote. Mr. May can ask if we have any members currently joined by telephone.
Yes, Pat Holland.
Yeah, Ms. Councillor Pat Holland is on the phone. So in a few minutes, you'll be asked to vote, or in a few seconds. Yes.
Chair, do you need to start spot home and touch his voting?
Okay, I'll ask her. Can you ask Councillor Holland?
No.
Ashida?
Councillor Holland, are you on the phone?
Yes, I'm for.
Yeah, 4. Thank you.
Thank you.
Has everybody voted? Has everybody voted? Thank you. We've got 48 against, none, abstentions 2. The motion has been carried. Thank you. Item 17, financial forecast tackling the overspend. Councillor Paul, please move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you,
You have
Chair.
up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. The report I just gave, let's say, was the more strategic end of how we tackle the situation, especially get presented to us by COVID. But on the other end of the scale is what we do on a more day-to-day level. You know, you could say how we bookend the situation. And what this report does is provides confidence to members and members of the public as to what our senior directors doing on a day-to-day basis to manage their money. It's not just about over here. There are questions to be asked of what the senior management team and the executive office here. And what it does, it sets out in a myriad of ways what we're doing. But there's one thing I want to bring people's attention to, is Action 4. As members know, there'll be numerous questions about the number of agency staff we use in an organisation. At the beginning of the year, we were like probably around 20%. And the intention is to go down to the London average for local authority, which is at 10. And there are plans to go below that. But as you can see here, reducing the numbers of agency and interim staff, A, to reduce cost, but B, to convert lots of those positions into permanent places where we can. And that really is important to us, because that will promote and provide stability in key areas. For example, in our social services area, where it's really quite key. And that's a really key one. And you can see here, there's a diagram there. Obviously, some departments done really well and some we've got more to go. But as you can see here, Chair, for you, it looks at agency staff, looks at our facilities management, it looks at deep dives in terms of our budget, and also it would make sure that the corporate directors are accountable for their income. As you look at number 9, action 9, they're going to have to sign off and be accountable for their overspend on that day-to-day basis. So again, it's there to provide confidence to members of the public and to members here tonight and to council that we've got that control in place. And bearing in mind, through this year, we've had some additional control mechanisms. So our governance arrangements internally are much tighter as well. As you may remember, in July, we brought the Internal Controls Commission. So to give you that framework, but we have a framework of capturing and making sure that we're doing all we can to get our costs under control. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have a second? May I please ask you second? You have up to 3 minutes if you need to speak.
I'm just going to second, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? Any member wishing to speak? Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul, you have a right to last reply if you wish to say anything further. You have up to 3 minutes if you need to say anything else.
No, Chair, I think I've covered all my possible open remarks. Thank you.
We now move to the vote. In a few moments, for those joining us on Zoom, the voting options of for, against, or abstain will appear on your screen. You have 30 seconds to vote. Mr. May, can I ask if we have members currently joined by telephone?
Yes, Pat Holland.
Okay.
4.
Thank you, Councillor.
Has everybody voted?
Still more.
We've got 45 for, against nil, 3 abstentions. The motion has been carried. Thank you. Item 18, Treasury Management Year-End 2019-2020 and Mid-Year 2020-2021 report. Councillor Paul, please move the recommendation in the report. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. This is Treasury Management Report 2019-2020 year-end and 2020-21 mid-year update. All local authorities are asked by regulation to produce this update to council, and this is part of our code of practice from SIPFA on treasury management and part of the SIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Financial Local Authorities, and it's part of our normal arrangements. Obviously, in March, in the second, we prepared the 2020-21 treasury management strategy, and that went to council as part of our budget then. This report here is the mid-year 2020-21 Treasury update, which is this report. And obviously, the annual review describes the activity what you're doing in the strategy. Looking forward, in a council in February, March, that to be determined, the 2021-22 Treasury strategy will be produced. Sorry, I'm getting a bit tongue-tied with the year dates. Apologies, Chair. So this is our normal update, but also just to remind council, I have said it before, we're shifting our treasury management. We're not going to use our balance sheet to play the markets anymore. We're not going to go into financial products like Lobos. We'll just simply use our balance sheet for the things we need to do, pay the wages, have a small flow. So this report, and you will see over time, this report will show that to members of us shifting our balance sheet, just to, not going to play the markets anymore. We're not in that game anymore. And it's just providing that confidence to members so they can see transparently every quarter what we're doing with your money, and it's there for the residents to see as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a second, Councillor Neil Wilson?
Yep.
You have 2 to 3 minutes if you need to speak.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you very well, Councillor Neil Wilson.
Thank you very much. Now, paragraph 3.1
3.2, sorry, says that we've got a responsibility as members for the review and scrutiny of the Treasury management policy and activities. And to support that review, Terry's highlighted the outturn position for Treasury activities and highlights coming before us in compliance with that. I want to highlight the fact that this council complies with the requirement under the code to give prior scrutiny to all of the above Treasury management reports by the Audit Committee, and I'm a member of that, so that's why I'm proud to second this. I think it's important that the public watching this know that we are complying not just with the CIPFA code, but with our commitment to more open and local financial management, particularly bearing in mind the figures we entrusted to act on behalf of the public. So this did come before the Audit Committee on the 11th of November, and the Cabinet this report before they reported to the full Council tonight. And I just want to support what Terry said, that we did note, and I think it's important to say, that there are no breach of the authority's prudential indicators, not any expected in 2021. So I think that's a tribute to both the financial team working for this authority, but also the oversight of the Cabinet member, but also those members on the committee that I'm not the chair, we have an independent chair, but all those colleagues of mine on audit. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? Please raise your hands. Any member? No, thank you. Councillor Paul, you have the right of last reply. Do you wish to say anything further, please?
No, Chair, the other thing I will say is welcome Councillor Neil Wilson's comments, and also to formally recognise the sort of, I can call it the revamped nature of the audit board, which is really have become a sort of an independent voice in looking at our governance and around our treasury. So from me to you, I welcome the impact of the audit and your kind word. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. We'll now move to the, We'll now move to the vote. In a few moments, for those joining us on Zoom, the voting options of for, against, or abstain will appear on your screen. You have 30 seconds to vote. Mr. May, can I ask if we have any members currently joined by telephone?
Councillor Holland, still.
Has everybody voted?
Councillor Holland, you need
Councillor Holland, sorry.
For.
Councillor Holland, have you voted? Or can you say something?
For.
Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Chair.
Councillor Islam.
Chair.
Councillor Islam, did you want to say something?
Yes, I'm not sure if my vote appeared on the screen, so I'm not sure what happened there, just for the record.
I'm not sure whether you voted.
Yeah, because it's not on my screen unless something happened, I don't know. There's no way of checking?
Any way of checking?
You can check after meeting. I believe that everyone voted.
Okay, no worries.
Adrian said he believes everybody has voted. So I didn't see your vote on the screen.
Don't know. I really don't know.
Anyway, you voted. I don't know how you did it, but you voted.
It must be a ghost.
Check after.
We can check after.
Sorry, does Councillor Islam just want to confirm which way he voted, and we
For.
can
For.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So are we putting him there?
We will check the record.
Oh, check
to see if it reflects
Chair, can I speak, please?
Okay.
Yeah, there's no
The 46 for, nil against, and 1 abstention. The motion has been carried. Thank you very much. Now, item 19.
Chair, can I speak? Chair, can I speak?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Chair, can I speak?
Can you speak on what?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to withdraw from this item because of my wife getting involved with the Newham governance
Oh, I see.
campaign.
You're declaring interest.
So I'm leaving. Please admit me after this agenda item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you're declaring interest. Thank you. Item 19, report of the referendum committee. I ask Councillor McLean, please move the recommendation in the report. You have up to 5 minutes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. And so I move this report as Chair of the Referendum Committee. The committee met on the 30th of November and agreed proposals on how the committee model will operate in Newham. As members are aware, the model will only be adopted if the electors of Newham vote in favour of the committee model at the referendum on the 6th of May 2021, which was a manifesto pledge. Once agreed, the proposals will be published on the Council's website so electors are informed of the options available to them at the referendum. The key features of the model agreed by the committee are set out in Appendix 1, which can be found on from page 216 in the Yellow Book. The proposals give a real choice of governance for electors to choose between the directly elected mayoral model of governance and the proposed committee system. I'll leave it there, Chair, because I know time is short, but I commend this report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitworth. Do you wish to second? Councillor Whitworth?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
I'm happy to second this these proposals, and I'll be brief because they set out, I think, very clearly the interesting proposals as what the committee model would look like. They also point out that everything doesn't need to change, because if the committee model were chosen, there wouldn't be the need to dismantle the whole of the current apparatus of the council, as the new decision-making committees will be able to dock into the existing directory structure, while the regulatory and governance committees would remain as they are. What would change, though, would be the decision-making process, as instead of decisions being made by the Mayor and Cabinet, they would be made by all the councillors who would sit on the committees which were given delegated powers by the council. So I think this model, as I said, has been well set out, clearly presented, and I hope you'll give them your approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the debate. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Clark? Councillor Clark, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you a little
Thank
bit.
you very much. Thank you very much. I'd just like Councillor McLean to confirm to me that this model, with all the ifs that we've said tonight, basically, if there is a new administration, that model, as it is written now, they do have the right to take that on board or create a different hybrid of that as well. So this model does not is forced on the new administration, other than it is a committee model, but not the detail.
I'm happy with that. Chair?
Councillor McLean?
Hiya. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was able to answer questions like that if it was a debate, but I'm happy to answer the question. As Councillor Clark is aware, this isn't set in stone. The reason for this paper is so that the people of Newham know what a potential committee system could look like. So it would be the council of 2022 that would determine exactly what it will look like. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Chair, point of order, please. Chair, point of order.
Yes.
Could we take the response to questions at the end of the debate?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. So you've got Councillor Gray next.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I welcome this report. I'm a firm believer in the committee system. We need to make our governance more transparent, more open, and more democratic. And just to give an example of the good work that committees can carry out, last week our own pension committee won a good governance prize by the local authority pension investments body in an event held last week, and it praised the newer model for being efficient, effective, and democratic. For example, we're one of the few pension committees that fully involve appointed trade union representatives to the committee who are allowed to speak and also to vote in a advisory manner. So it just goes to show we've all been on really rubbish, dreadful committees in our time. But if we get the model right, we can have effective, good democratic governance. And so I totally commend this report.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak? Anyone else? Councillor McLean, you have the right of last report. Do you wish to say anything further?
Yes, I do, Chair. I'm just a bit disappointed that some members have used this as an opportunity to speak one way or the other for either the committee system or against it. This paper clearly just sets out what the question is to the people, and I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I raise a point of order?
No. Councillor Gray, what's your point of order?
Yeah, I have a right to reply if a member makes inaccurate information about me.
No,
That's
not a point of order, Chair.
No, that's not the protocol, Councillor Gray.
I thought it was. I thought we had a right to make a correction when people make inaccurate comments.
If I can advise the council through the chair, that's not a point of order which has to identify a breach of the procedure rules, and all of the members of council are entitled to express their views. And I think my advice to the chair in advising her to move on is that all Councillor McLean was doing was expressing her view just as every other member had done, rather than stating any inaccuracy about what was said in regard to previous members' speeches.
Okay, well, apologies if I've raised a wrong point of order. I'll check the Constitution and get back to you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gray. Yes, we look forward to that. Thank you. We'll move to the vote. In a few moments, for those joining us on Zoom, the voting options for, against, or abstain will appear on your screen. You have 30 seconds to vote. Mr. May, can I ask, do we have any members currently joined by telephone? Councillor Pat Holland?
So, thank you, Chair.
We've got the results: 43 for, no against, and 1 abstention. The motion has been carried. Thank you. Item 20, changes to the council constitution. As a need for further consultation is required, I, as an author of the report and chair, am preparing the item to a future meeting of the council.
We need Councillor Suga to come back in. Councillor Thekapuriel to come back into the room.
We'll come back in February. That's the next council meeting. Thank you.
I'm not sure it can wait that long. I think Councillor Suga has got to come back in for this item.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought you meant. Yeah, sorry, we misunderstood each other here. Councillor Suga, can you come back in? We are back. I'm sure he's back already. Are you back, Councillor Suga?
He's not. I think he may have left the meeting.
Are you back, Councillor Suga, or you're going for good?
Re-inviting him. Just in the waiting room, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Suga, you can come back.
Here he is. Here he is. There he is.
You missed the last one, but I'm sure you agree with me that you will defend this item. Is he in? Yes, he's in. You didn't miss much, Councillor Sugar. Item 21, appointments. Does the mayor have any appointments?
Thank you, Chair. I am here. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Sugar. Lovely to see you. Does the mayor have any appointments to make?
Yeah, I don't think we're around this one.
The mayor, is she around?
No.
Do you have any appointments? Are you saying yes or no? I can't
No,
hear
she's
you.
shaking her head.
Oh, you're shaking your head. Your head. Sorry. Thank you. You'll be pleased to know. Conclusion of meeting. You've been very good, actually. The meeting is now closed. Thank you and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you very much.